Shell Bravo. In the podcast episode today, we're gonna talk about Mexico and Eurocentrism. I choose this topic because I think it's really important to understand what the problem with Mexico is and who it's connected to Eurocentrism. I'm also going to talk about who this issue arrived in Mexico and what the effects of Eurocentrism are. Before we start, I just want to say that the purpose of this podcast is to raise awareness as a society. We need to overcome this inferiority complex. My intention isn't to minimize other cultures, but to stop believing that our own culture is less valuable or less important. So, what is Eurocentrism? According to the Cambridge Dictionary, Eurocentrism is the fact of saying things from the point of view of Europe or European people, the fact of considering Europe or Europeans to be the most important. If we look at history books, we mostly see European history. It's very rare to find information about the history of America, Asia, or Africa. Because of that, we don't learn much about the contributions, philosophy, art, or culture of these continents. For example, when we talk about the discovery of America, history books rarely mention that Columbus was a killer who committed atrocities like slavery, torture, and massacres. In addition, if we pay attention to our history, we can notice that the Spanish introduced a caste system that continues to exist in subtle ways today. Mestizos, mulattos, criollos, zambos, etc. Even though this system is no longer official, we internalize it. We tend to associate European traits like white skin and blue eyes with beauty and success, and indigenous traits with poverty or ugliness. Unfortunately, Mexico is not the only country with the scars of Eurocentrism. This effect occurs throughout Latin America. For example, the former president of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, once said in an interview, Mexicans came from the Indians, Brazilians came from the jungle, and Argentinians arrived on boats.
I'm usually also a Europeanist, someone who believes in Europe. Because about Europe, Octavio Paz once wrote that Mexicans came from the Indians, Brazilians came out of the jungle, but we Argentines came off the boats. They were ships that came from there.
He implied that being indigenous was something bad or shameful. Also, history books rarely mention the history of Latin America, its national heroes or artists, philosophy, etc. They focus mostly on Europe. In Asia, before colonization, fair skin was associated with the upper class since it meant the person didn't work under the sun. After colonization, however, European beauty standards, white skin, large eyes, thin noses, became dominant, and Asian cultures were portrayed as backward. Even though they made great contributions such as inventing paper, printing, and gunpowder. In Africa, history books rarely show their perspective of colonization or their contributions like the creation of tools such as the hand axe, fur control, bows, and arrows, and boats. History also tends to ignore the imposition of European languages such as French and English, but this problem also affects Europe itself, giving it a false sense of superiority while ignoring its violent colonial past. Many people still believe colonization brought civilization, and progress. Even though many indigenous people already had better calendars, hygiene, agriculture, and irrigation systems than Europe. Another example is the film Emilia Perez, whose European director believes he understands all of Latin America's problems, even though he has never lived in Mexico or in Latin America. Consequences of Eurocentrism. Language. We obviously speak Spanish because Spain imposed its language. But during this podcast process, I remember something from my language acquisition class. The teacher asked what is the difference between acquiring a foreign language and an indigenous one. Some people, including me, say there's no difference because the process is the same. But others say it's not the same. You can't speak Nahuatl in a business context, for example. I found that interesting because, in my opinion, the main purpose of language is communication, and business is only one of many contexts. I believe it's very important to preserve indigenous languages because they're part of our culture and our country is mega diverse. I also believe that we are leaving a part of the population vulnerable just because they don't know how to speak Spanish to serve us, such as not receiving proper attention, discrimination, etc. In addition, Eurocentrism affects everyday language in Mexico. Phrases like to improve the race are used when someone marries a foreigner or has a family member with lighter skin. Another example is you look like an Olmec graft, which has a racist connotation suggesting that having indigenous features is unattractive. Some people also use words like indio or prieto with negative meanings, reinforcing harmful stereotypes and racial hierarchies. Traditions and customs. In Mexico, there are still many prejudices against pre-Hispanic traditions, like Shumolpili, the bending of the years ceremony. If someone believes in gods like Tlaloc or Quetzalcoatl, those beliefs are often frowned upon, discriminated against, or seen as backward. Gentrification. Today, many foreigners move to Mexico because it's less expensive than their countries. Many of them keep their jobs abroad and don't go through the legal process to live in Mexico, so they don't pay taxes or earn a Mexican salary. This causes displacement of local residents, higher housing prices, and turns their right to housing into a privilege. In addition, many foreigners refuse to speak Spanish or any native language, even though if we went to their countries, they would demand that we speak their language perfectly. Interestingly, this mostly happens with European or American foreigners and recently Asian, but not with Latin American or African ones because we tend to value recognition from more developed countries. My conclusion is I believe Eurocentrism has left a deep scar on our country because we're still not fully aware of how beautiful and rich our culture truly is. Our traditions, language, and history are very important and we need to learn to appreciate them. Of course, it's good to learn about the world history, but we should focus on all continents equally and put aside this feeling of inferiority because we are not less than Europe. Besides, we should not hinder or look down on each other. because that will only divide us even more. I hope you like this episode. Thank you for listening, and bye.